Hi, welcome to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Thanks for joining the conversation. Hello, good morning, Trenessa and Rohan. I'm so excited to have you here. Yay!
Yay.
We have been collaborating for the past several months on this very exciting event that Blasian March is bringing to Orlando, which is the Blasian Book Fair, where we are going to give out a bunch of free books to the community. And I thought it would be great to sit down with both of you so we could kind of talk about what your organization does or your business, and also just kind of how excited we are for this event. So I'd like to start with Rowan because, of course, this is your brainchild and it is all born out of your love and passion. And so please just, share kind of the inspiration behind the Blasian March and how it all started, and take it away.
Yeah, well, first off, I'm just excited working with both of y'all. It's oh gosh, I'm just like having all these like happy feels. Like, oh my gosh, like we're coming to the South, the state where I was born. Wowzers. So Blasian March, it began in 2020 during, as many folks would know, that time period when a lot of anti-Black violence was happening and still happening. A lot of anti-Asian violence was happening and of course still happening. And I was one of those people who was like, well, I can't just sit down after learning about the murder of George Floyd. Let's go to the streets. And I kept seeing, as a mixed race person, how oftentimes, even in this moment of like high tension, a very unifying moment, there was still some division within the quote unquote unity of groups. So like, I would go like one rally and everyone would be like, thank you to our white allies, our Latino allies. And no one mentioned Asian folks who, at some rallies, I would notice how Asian folks were like medics or were doing logistics or safety. And it was kind of, as someone who's part Asian, was kind of like, I don't like seeing the replication of the invisibilization of Asian Americans. That's something that we in Asian America deal with so often as part of political discourse. Simultaneously, I was also going to some actions within, East Asian circles, and the anti-Blackness was a whole nother story, which, I don't need to go into. But for myself, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna do my own little thing as a healing process. Because also I was noticing how so many other orgs around the city here in New York were doing, Black Women's March or Black Disabled Lives Matter March. And I was like, oh, there should be something for Black Asians. Like, simple as that. So yeah, it was born October 11th, 2020. And
Been
it's
marching ever since.
marching ever since. I was like, this was supposed to be a one-time thing. What happened?
I feel you. I feel that sentiment. Like, oh, let me do this one thing. But then now here you are coming to Florida, which we're so grateful for. By the way, it is definitely a state, and I know Trenessa will echo this, that absolutely needs to celebrate this diversity, but also just a celebration of something positive and to kind of bring these communities together. I mean, Trenessa, I'd love to kind of hear your take actually on what Rowan just shared, because, during that time, during the pandemic, as a small business owner, and of course with all of things happening here in Central Florida, even, there was definitely a dynamic that I was feeling that actually echoes exactly what they just shared. And so what was that like for you during kind of the pandemic, and after the murder of George Floyd, and then seeing anti-Asian hate? Like, did you feel any of those tensions, or were you just what did you observe?
But what I've observed is, even from a personal standpoint, you saw the injustice that was happening and how deeply it impacted the Black community as well. During that time, what was happening with George Floyd and many others that were being brutalized and hurt, especially under the police brutality, it began a lot of people that wanted to go back to, expressing their voices. There was a lot of people signing the Color of Change, and I've signed them myself, Color of Change petitions But then also during that time frame, especially during when there was an uproar for screaming about justice needed to be had, especially for those that are being impacted, there's a lot of people going out there that had that quest for knowledge, meaning for that quest of knowledge, getting access to those books so that way they have a true understanding of those communities that they lack knowledge on. So I saw an upcharge of, I didn't mean to say upcharge, but I saw an increase of people coming to support not only my business, but many other Black-owned bookstores because
Yes.
they knew that we had those resources that they needed. So that way they wouldn't walk around with that lack of knowledge. So during that, there was quite a bit of people that wanted to know exactly how could they become a better person to support or just become more knowledgeable. I saw a lot of I had quite a bit of people that were buying books that were written by Dr. Angela Davis, and they were going to get books from written by James Baldwin, Toni Morrison, all of those other thought provoking that had a true understanding, and even going back to where they was trying to buy books that were related to our justice system and how they impact the Black community and various other different things. So there was a lot of quests for people trying to find that knowledge in regards to becoming more aware. And so they were buying those books as well.
Yeah. And I think that was maybe the one of the things that was born out of all of this, trauma, right? Is that we do get a small opportunity and moment to grow and learn together. And I did see, being in Central Florida like you, Trenessa, that there was
Mhm.
a lot of advocacy for, hey, support small Black-owned
Mhm.
businesses. Hey, here's a list of it, which I had never seen or known about before, which was honestly, selfishly phenomenal for me because they, of course, list restaurants. And I was like, yes, all about this. Let me hit all of them up. There was food trucks. I mean, I'm loving like chicken fire and all this stuff. So I was like, oh, I can, safely go get my takeout and try to support because it's just such a great opportunity in that regard. Like, not that there's positivity in a sense of like, this was absolutely like a horrific time for so many communities. But the one thing that we can
Mhm.
hopefully do is grow and learn from that. And that becomes a community,
Mhm.
community effort. But I would love to hear a little bit about, and Rowan, because you're in New York and it's very different from Florida. And I know that you're familiar with Florida, but it has also changed. It has changed over the last decade in ways that I perceive as, quite negative based on, the direction that this state has headed. The headline news that we're getting is, to me, never very positive. But one of the things that I know you've faced is bringing community together is never an easy thing. As much as everyone is, I want to be an ally, I want to do all the right things, and I support you, but will I actually show up? Will I actually give a donation? Will I actually volunteer hours? Will I actually spread the word? Like, it's not that people don't have good intentions. I find that follow through, that next step, that actual like, okay, now show me, or like now take action. Has that been a challenge for you in terms of you've hosted a lot of these events around the country now? What is one of the biggest challenges you face? But also, how do you get over that hump of, oh, people who care, but then what can they do about it? Like, what is your method for that strategy?
I think for me, it goes back to lack of political imagination, which goes way back to what Trenessa just said about this quest for knowledge. I think like a lot of people are under the impression that I went to one protest and I'm done, or I went to this one thing and I'm done. Like I've got the gold star for, stopping Asian hate, or I have a gold star because I have a Black Lives Matter sign in front of my door. I'm like, okay, sure, girl. But I think for me, it really is how do the actions I create that ripple effect to change political imagination over time. So like obviously some things are not going to happen today or tomorrow or the next week. I think some people take a very long time to realize what they're doing is performative. So I think for me, it comes back to art, it comes back to literature, it comes back to planting ideas as seeds. Like So with the book fair, it's like I am exchanging these books in hopes that people who read it and take it home will have that long-term change, because now they are seeing and in experiencing and internalizing new ideas around, you know, our political landscape, around what does solidarity actually mean as a daily practice rather than a one-time offshoot. That was a big problem back in 2020, 2021. I think a lot of people were really energized. I think the Stop Asian Hate movement definitely piggybacked on a lot of the Black Lives Matter movement. But again, there was no long-term follow through, because I think a lot of people just did not understand the stories of the other. And there wasn't enough ways to understand how we're actually similar. So I feel like the book fair kind of plays into that, but also for me, just going back to like how art, I feel like art is such a strategy as a way to almost like suspend any binaries or boundaries imposed by white supremacy in all of our communities. So like if it's me walking around in traditional Chinese clothing, you know, like with my complexion, that raises a lot of questions and suspends a lot of expectations of what do Chinese people even look like. If it's me, I know at our last Blasian Pride event, we had, you know, this Nigerian LGBT immigrant performing and rapping and dancing. And, you know, it's such a beautiful way to like show other people that there is more than just the stories we have been given by white supremacy about each other. I think that is kind of the way that I am working on shifting things.
Yeah, that is so eloquently put. I really appreciate that as a narrative, because it is definitely a challenge that I've faced here as, you know, Make Us Visible Florida move forward to say, okay, what can we do? Because like you said, there's so much that's performative. Not that social media can't be used as a powerful tool to reach the masses, but I really just don't believe in just like, let me post this message, let me repost this. And I don't think that's negative in a sense, but if there's, like you said, there's no follow through, there's no afterthought, there's no true conversation starter that's actually going to change minds. I think it's important as a Kung Fu teacher, right? I have kids all the time that are looking for knowledge, right? Trenessa, like they're not going to pick up a book unless we kind of put it in front of them. And so I think those conversations need to be had, but it's such a great strategy, Rowan, because I feel like we do not know each other's stories. And we also, in this journey, I so embarrassingly realized how much of a deficit I had in my education here growing up in Florida. I knew nothing about Asian American history. I just recently learned through this, you know, last few years about how much solidarity between the Black and Asian communities existed since the Chinese Exclusion Act, right? With Frederick Douglass was like, yeah, no, this is not good. And then all the way up, we push forward in time to, you know, Yuri Kochiyama. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, no idea about her relationship with Malcolm X and, you know, civil rights movement. And like in my mind, I know, yes, there has been solidarity, right? But it's never been taught to me. And because of that, I'm so ignorant. Not that I've not been supportive, like you said, you know, show up to the Black Lives Matter, show up to the Stop Asian Hates and try to do the right thing, speak out. But I think education and knowledge is a huge missing piece, because I'm, you know, people look to me as an activist and a leader in the community, but I'm the first to say I didn't know any of this. I was completely ignorant. Yes, of course, I, you know, as a Chinese Jamaican as well, I've always had, you know, embraced, you know, Blasian backgrounds, Black backgrounds. I've been exposed, but so many people haven't. Like you said, Rowan, it's like, oh wait, you're wearing that, but why? But oh, that can happen. I mean, even when I say I'm Chinese Jamaican, people are like, what do you mean? You know, so I get it, right? It's like, what? I don't understand this. This makes no sense to me, right? But like, I think just kind of exploding those stereotypes and that has to be done through understanding, knowledge, conversation. And, you know, Trenessa, to you, this is where all of us here obviously clearly have a love for books, because this whole event is surrounded by giving out free books to the community. There has been a very, very significant issue with books being accessible to our students here in Florida. It is super problematic, right? We've just seen an attack on books written by people of color, written by the LGBTQ community. We've seen, and like, unfortunately, the way the law works, and I need to go back and research this, but so don't quote me if I'm wrong, audience, but if one parent makes a complaint, that book gets banned. Like, it only takes one complaint, apparently. I think that's how it goes. And that is insane that you can walk into a school library and half the shelves are just empty from things that kids need to see themselves represented in. So Trenessa, like, have you seen an uptick in, like you said, from the pandemic to now? Because to me, it's only gotten worse with the thirst for knowledge and the thirst for learning more. How has that kind of impacted your business? And what is it that you've noticed with, that thirst for knowledge with books, and why is it important to you as well? Because this is a huge passion project. I don't know that I would say, hey guys, here's a great business to go into, books. Like that seems counterintuitive in this digital age, right?
Yeah, if you were to ask me like many moons ago, Trenessa, what are you going to do? And I'd be like, girl, I'm going to be in fashion. I'm going to be in New York buying clothes and all of this stuff here. But I am on a totally different path. I worked in higher ed, especially in leadership for 5 years. But when it comes to, this quest for like what selling books, it actually just came up to just as an idea. Because I don't know how long you've been here, Mimi, but in 2008, there was, I'm sorry, before that, in the 90s, there was a very popular Black-owned bookstore named Montessori Books here. And it was thriving. And then so one Saturday morning, I got up and I was like, you know what? I need a book. I'm tired of doing this work for this MBA. So let me get a book where I can just read. And I went to the location, and the location is like right across from where Camping World Stadium is, where that church is.
Yes.
Let me speak this up. But so when I went there, and that location wasn't there anymore. So then that sparked that idea. And I'm like, okay, let me find another Black-owned bookstore. And there was none there. And my parents always told myself and my siblings, sink or swim, meaning no matter what it is that you want to do, either you swim to get where you want to go, or you fail at, and you sink or you fail at it. And so I say, okay, sink or swim. The idea of Kizzy's came up. She's named after the character from Roots, because I connected with her. Yeah, so that's who she's connected with. So, and that's how the idea started to be. I started to do research, and then I went to school, got my doctorate, did my research on gentrification and its impact on the small business owners of Harlem, New York. And then I did some other stuff that I wanted to do. And then come 2018, my mom had a come to Jesus moment with me. And so she was like, Miss, you done did all of this stuff. What are you going to do with all of this knowledge? And I said, you know what? I'm going to launch Kizzy's. And that's how Kizzy's came to be. Kizzy started off, we're still online, but our goal is to rebuild the Black literary community here in Orlando, because there isn't a place here that provides the books that talks about our stories. And we need to have a place where those people that have a love for reading and the culture can come together and vibe off with some great, amazing works that's written by Black authors, both indie and best-selling. So, and that's one of the things here. I do get where people are actually, where they'll reach out and say, I'm looking for this particular book here, or do you have any books that truly represent our story from this angle? And I give recommendations there. This is my second year doing the book donation drive. We got a little bit more books, but the main reason why I did the book donation drive in regards to why I started it is because we have a lot of book deserts. And when you talk about a book desert, you be like, Trenessa, are you talking about the dessert that we eat as a cake? No, I'm talking about dessert where there's a lot of areas in our communities where kids there aren't any books that truly represent our experiences, and our kids don't have access to it. Mimi, you talked about how you knew about your Asian history and the Black history, the different dynamics, excuse me if I got my words twisted, but like growing up with myself, my parents made sure that me and my siblings knew exactly about our history. So, like on occasion, my mom would have, there was art parties, meaning that people would, somebody that an art buyer would come and you buy the art with the frame that's written by Black people, by Black artists. So they make sure that we were exposed to the history and some things like that. And that's one of the things that the goal is with Kizzy's, is to make sure that our stories, they have access to it. Because, you know, our stories and reading is the most powerful thing. And, you know, our ancestors, they fought so hard for us to have that ability to write and read, because oftentimes some people don't understand the power of words, both written and both verbal. They can either build you up or break you down. And with the access of a good book, you know, reading it truly empowers you. You know, you might not have access to that particular culture or to that particular community, but just by reading that book, it'll open up your perspective and it'll trigger that imagination to where you're like, oh, this is how he experienced this, and you become more empathetic, and it offers that creativity. So that's why I'm so strongly in regards to with reading, because reading is so powerful. And just by you getting access to that one good book, and it can trigger so many other different things, and trigger that quest of knowledge to learn about other stuff that you might not
100%.
even know about. What was going on in the Blasian community, especially as it relates to queers. But if you get that good book that's by a queer author that talks about that community, you'll become more knowledgeable, because yes, you might not have access to that community, or you might not have access to any community in general that's different from yours. But a great book is going to broaden that and help you become more knowledgeable. And that's one of the things that they're truly trying to fight. If you think about it, and let me know if I'm talking too much, because once I start talking and I just go on like the
Yeah, no,
energizer.
I mean,
Okay.
just because we're with time, I mean, I would let everyone know, Trenessa's going to be at the book fair, so please show up, hang out at the booth, so she can just educate you all day on the importance of these books, but and hopefully have some of her favorite ones there. I have to say, you know, you touched on a really key word that I use a lot in hopes that I remember it, I honor it, and then I teach it and I live by it, which is empathy. And I feel like if we had so much more of that in the world today, we wouldn't have the divisiveness, and we wouldn't have maybe even the need to have these events to just shove into the community's face like, hey, you all, here's what we need to be doing. I think if there was more empathy, we could actually put a lot of our energy towards, you know, different actions that would be progressing us forward versus just like going backwards and trying to pull everyone with you know, with the right wave of energy. So I think that's absolutely, you know, I know Rowan's like nodding nodding their head, yes, 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 because it's probably, you know, something that we've all come across in wherever we are in our lives. And I think that I want you to know kind of, there are so many times I refer to you and I have to catch myself because I've been saying, well, Kizzy, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, it's Trenessa. But I've been referring to you as Kizzy
Right.
because it's Kizzy's Books and More. And thank you for, you know, sharing that connection. And I apologize if I ever do call you Kizzy because it
No,
like
it's
comes
fine.
out and it's so catchy. And now the you know, the layers and the symbolic meaning is so incredible. So thank you for sharing that. That was definitely one of my questions. So Rowan, like, you know, you're hearing, I think it's really lovely to be in an echo chamber also. So thank you for that this morning, guys. Loving
Absolutely.
echo chambers because yes, we could just talk love of books, love of knowledge, love of empathy all day. You know, we talked about how much of a challenge this was, what your strategy is. And you said this was supposed to be a one-off event. And now you find yourself, you've gone to the West Coast, you're in the North, and then here you go, coming to the South, where I think this is one of the biggest waves that you could really be making in terms of a splash. And what I've always appreciated about you is the conversations we've had off air has been centered around, this is not a one size fits all. Like your messaging is very open to, hey, this is the Blasian March. Here's our mission. But at the same time, in your community, you know, we have to take the steps that we have to take in each of our different states to make sure the message is heard. And you've been so flexible where I'm gonna, you know, probably get the haters on me for this, but there are a lot of organizations out there that it's just like my way or highway, and it doesn't matter, like it's only this mission and this is the only way to do it, that's the only right way. And I feel like the reason you've been so successful in one, every circle I've been in, everyone's like, oh, Rowan, love the Firebird, like loving everything
Aw.
about Rowan and all the things. And from a performer standpoint, but from an organizational standpoint, I have to say it was really refreshing to be able to communicate with you under, what I actually consider to be, okay, we're in a really restrictive state of Florida. There are things that I've had to compromise with for legislation, for example, like my own principles of like, oh, I got to have these tough conversations with people that I don't respect necessarily, but how do you get things done? And I think you've done a really amazing job of being so open. So now that it's a nationwide movement, what does that mean to you? And how, yes, I mean, you are a nationwide movement. And like, what does that mean to you? But also, like, is that just innately who you are, or is that part of like, as you've been a part of other groups and done other things, you realize like this is the way forward, because otherwise you just get the smaller echo chambers of people who, you won't reach everybody, right?
I think for me, it's one taking, again, reading. It was reading Angela Davis. It's reading Nobuko Miyamoto. If folks know her, she is still alive, amazingly, and she was a survivor of the Japanese internment. Wound up collaborating with the Black Panthers and Yuri Kochiyama. Like,
Amazing.
I was like, who's this icon among us? But like, I feel like once I began to like, read these Black, Asian, Indigenous, Latina, feminist stories, it kind of like hit me. I was like, this is collective effort. It should not be, as I know Bayard Rustin pointed out during the civil rights era, as a way to like kind of bring people more celebritizing. And for me, I feel with every iteration of the Blasian March, the leadership needs to feel like the main character of the story. Like, I should not have that much sway and power. I think obviously, yes, there should be like a core, like we have core values, core idea, hence our mission statement. But at the end of the day, if I am not sharing power, if I am not sharing that main character energy across the story, then that's just ego and that's just selfish. And that will eventually burn itself out. Like, a movement cannot rely on one person, it has to be collective. So yeah, like, think about civil rights era. Yes, we all, put Martin Luther King on this pedestal, but the people around him, the organizers around him, like Bayard Rustin, Kiyoshi Kuromiya, who was openly gay, Japanese American, also survived the internment, organized with King and marched on Selma, and helped watch the kids after he was assassinated. Like, there's a collective of people in that time period as well. So I was just like, I feel like that should be named explicitly as a learning lesson of the civil rights era, and also an aspect of how white supremacy has created a mythology around the civil rights era. And I'm trying to, in my work, to like counter that by making sure that it's more of a collective effort than just me showing up and parking and barking and all those things.
Well, I really applaud you for it, because you would actually be surprised. And I've been in my own bubble of my Kung Fu world for such a long time, and starting Make Us Visible Florida was quite the awakening for me, and the reaction we got when our bill passed, right? Both positive and negative, right? It was really jarring to realize that just because an organization does have a good mission doesn't always mean they play nice with everybody. And I was like, oh, okay. I just thought like, hey, we're all trying to do something good here. So it was just very refreshing. And I want to point that out because I think people don't realize that. Like, they see, XYZ org and think, oh, no matter what, a nonprofit means well and does good work. And that could be true, but two things can be true at the same time, right? Like, for example, our bill passing and the takeaway from allowing AP African American history not being taught is bad. Both things can be true. One doesn't have to like negate the other. And this is where the solidarity piece, this is where the understanding each other's stories piece, this is where realizing that our stories are intertwined. And by holding back any of them, we get none of them. And that by us joining the conversation, we're able to fight alongside the rest of the communities to advocate for education, to advocate for all these books and authors' voices being heard and elevated and amplified. So I was super psyched, when one of our, national leaders was like, hey, want you to meet with Blasian March. Rowan does these marches around the country, and there's this, organization that kind of brings these groups together. And I was like, yes, let's do it. And so here we are, several months later, and on September 14, Saturday, we are all headed to a Perfect Union Art Gallery at West Oaks Mall, which is on the west side of town, very accessible for so many of our communities. And I went there yesterday, and the FusionFest host Gareth, and they are just like amazing. Like the gallery is phenomenal, first of all. So one is there will be a special exhibit. That's what it's called, right? An art exhibit, like a special showing of a very specific art showcase, which is sexual abuse survivors. So we're really excited to amplify that. So thank you to Gareth Edwards and Perfect Union Art Gallery, and a huge thank you to FusionFest for being a partner with us to kind of just have that connectivity and uplifting of one another. The space is perfect. We've got the whole wing of the mall, everybody. So come out, because there'll be several tables of free books. And Trenessa, I'm sure you could weigh into like how important it is to pick up books of people you haven't heard of before, books you've never seen before, books you normally wouldn't read. Like, can you maybe talk briefly about like the importance of, like you were saying earlier, how important it is to learn each other's stories, other stories. But when you go and look at books, what catches your eye that's like, oh, here's where I'm going to be learning something. And for our youth out there, I'm going to tell you, sometimes learning can actually be fun. There's going to be kids books. There's going to be youth books. There's a graphic novel. We've got some donations from some fantastic publishing houses, as well as authors and indie authors right here in Central Florida. So please come out. But, Trenessa, what catches your eye? Like when you go, you're going to look around the book fair, and I'm going to have to hold you down, because I'm sure you're going to be like, ooh, I want to grab all these different books too. You're going to be all, in heaven surrounded by books, but
yeah, I'm gonna have to have somebody hold my pocketbook.
Well, it's all free, right? All the books are free. Well, everybody's going to be limited to one, audience members who are coming out. But yes, I know you're going to be real excited.
But one of the things that I know that always catches my attention is always the cover of the book, because the artwork, and that's oftentimes what truly markets that gets the reader's attention. So if I see a pretty cover, a nice cover, that gets me to go and look at the synopsis on the back of the book. But when I often talk about Kizzy's and with reading and the importance of it and representation, I oftentimes, especially when it talks about with children, is to find a book that they can relate to. There's this, like one of my teacher friends from last year when I had the book donation drive, I gave her one of the books, the children's book that's written by, the tennis player. I always say her name wrong. She's Haitian. She's Haitian Asian. I can't say her name right.
Oh, Naomi Osaka?
Yes.
Naomi. Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, she has a children's books, and one of the children's book, it talks about representations, and one of the characters in there has a wheelchair. And so my friends, who's a teacher that taught first grade, that book is one of the books that truly sparked that child's reading for last year, because she is African American in a wheelchair, and her children's book had a cover with a character in a wheelchair. Yeah. So that's one of the things is see a book that represents, that you can connect with, and that's what sparks your interest there, even if it's a STEM book or anything like that.
Yes.
No matter what it is. No matter what it is, it'll trigger your imagination. It doesn't have to be one particular genre, whatever tickles your fancy and bring you that book joy, or even that joy within you.
Mm-hmm. I
I hope I
think
answered.
that no, that's perfect. That's perfect. I mean it's more of a personal question. Like how do you determine? Because I mean you're such a book expert, an aficionado.
Mhm.
So I was just kind of curious. And so Rowan, what are you most excited to see at the Orlando Blasian Book Fair? Because again, this is your brainchild, and I know what it's like to have started something that you didn't think would take off in such a you
Right.
know, rapid fire way. And like you said, we're coming to the South, which can be honestly, I'm being honest here. A lot of people have not felt safe here, that this is a safe space for people from different backgrounds, especially our LGBTQ community. Like there's a lot of people that have kind of this impression of Florida. And so what are you most excited about with this Orlando event, this Florida event that's really, you know, amplifying and honoring your movement?
Oh man, so it's hilarious because my mother is also very worried about me coming to the South. And she's
We
like,
got you.
don't go. And I was like, Mother, the places where these things are the most intense is where we need to be organizing. Like, it's great organizing in New York. Yes, New York has its own racism. It has, as Trenessa said, its own book desert, especially in BIPOC neighborhoods. But like, you know, these conversations are not going to be as the stakes aren't as high, and so the weight and results aren't as high. So I was like, no, we need to be mobilizing in the South, where books are, as you said, not accessible 1,000%. I think I'm most excited about seeing or witnessing first time connections. That's definitely something I have really had a really funny time watching. Like our very first Blasian Pride event, which celebrates Black, Asian, and Blasian LGBTQ people. Some of my collaborators from Thailand came through, and at the end of the march we just had like this giant feast, and usually it's like Black, African, and Asian foods, all like for everyone to like try different things. And one of my collaborators came up to me and she was like, I had this thing, it was so good, I got like 10 more, it's called a plantain. And I was like, yes, absolutely.
Oh my God, that's
Oh man.
hilarious.
Um,
It's the platanos. It gets everybody. It brings
it's
us all
everybody.
together. My husband would be like going bananas, right? He's gonna be going bananas, literally, right? He's gonna love that. He's gonna love that. A plantain. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. I love these like, these first time things, or even like Black Asian Trans Power rally in Los Angeles. There was an
Yeah.
attendee who had experienced a really rough moment with a person who was queer, and then had a very just anti-LGBT perspective on everybody. And then like randomly stumbled across our rally, and there was dancing, there's music, there's free food, there's all these free resources. And then they were like, oh, y'all ain't that bad after all. I was like, no, we're really not.
Like, I want to party. Actually, I just wanted to join the party. Let's be real. Like, and this
It's
is,
all
and
party here.
yeah, I mean, this is the point though, right? That you said it earlier, art, which, you know,
Mhm.
I encompasses music, dance, literature, food can be art.
Mhm.
Like, those are the things that bring us together, right? Like when the whole anti-Asian hate thing was happening, I'm like, come on, y'all, you get Chinese food all the time. Like, don't even pretend. Like, so I just really feel, on a serious note though, like these are the things that bring us together. And the more we can amplify the the artwork and the voices and the stories and the cultural experiences that bring us together versus pulling us apart, whatever, you know, the venue, whatever the event is, I think is just going to be like great food for the soul, is just going to be amazing for all of us. Like you said, it's going to be a great party. I'm going to let everybody know, please show up. It starts at 1 o'clock at the West Oaks Mall at a Perfect Union Art Gallery, which is closer to the JC Penney side. I'm going to point that out now. I'll have maps up. There's an RSVP link that I'm going to leave here for everybody. There's going to be a Chinese lion dance by the world famous Wallam Kung Fu Temple. We've got rapper, activist, incredible performer, Jason Chu, who's going to be on one of our panels talking. He's out of LA and he's going to be here to amplify, share. If you've seen him on Instagram or TikTok, he's got viral videos about AAPI history, education, and he's just constantly a thought provoker and really is great on education. Summer Strawberry, who is an amazing teenage author of a book that sold over 10,000 copies, and through her own experience of bullying, decided to write her own book of affirmations on especially celebrating Black and brown beauty and women empowerment. And so we love that. And she's going to also do a vision board workshop for the youth, which has been something very popular that she's been sharing around the state. So encourage people to come out, bring poster boards and whatever inspires you. And she's going to take you through that journey herself. We've got FusionFest panel, which is our incredible partner that hosts such a variety of multicultural events around the state. And really, they're going to kind of talk about their mission and the wonderful work that they do. Of course, we got Trenessa at Kizzy's bookstore that's going to do a Q&A, but she will also be available all day to share her love of books and to, again, educate us. We have, and I don't know if Rohan knows this, but totally going to be in charge of the cosplay runway show and making sure that any cosplayers, and also you don't have to be a cosplayer, you could also come in your traditional costumes or clothing or any representation that you feel connected with, that represents you. We'd love to see some diversity. I would love to learn more about any type of fashion. Like Trenessa said, I was like, oh yeah, fashion, that sounds fantastic. So we're gonna have a fashion cosplay runway show that'll be really fun. There's going to be more performances. We've got a kids reading corner. I mean, so many things happening. Again, local authors are going to be there to do book signings, and every book is going to be free. So we also encourage you, if you have a book that you've bought recently that's maybe gently used and you want to be like, hey, maybe I want to do a book swap, or you want to be like, I want to share this book because it has made a difference in my life. I know for sure Trenessa wants to know about it, and Rohan wants to know, and I want to know about it. So kind of bring your passion here too. But we have free books that's going to be distributed. Our goal is to make sure that these books are accessible to everyone. So no matter what your age, there's going to be a book there for you that you will love. The Make Us Visible Florida activity book will be given out too. So please come out. It's from 1 to 5 o'clock. We've got something lined up every hour. And so come spend the whole time with us. We would absolutely love it. I have an RSVP link that I'm going to leave here for you guys so that you can let us know you're coming so we can be prepared. And again, it's just going to be a good time. So Trenessa, Rohan, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast to kind of amplify and talk about this. I loved picking your brain and learning. I got to learn. I get to learn through these conversations all the time. So is there anything else you want to throw out there that I missed?
Trenessa,
No.
where can we follow and learn more about you, Trenessa? Where can the new fans come and find you?
Oh, you see, I'm up here shaking my head. No, you don't have to have me. Okay, I forgot I have to plug myself sometimes.
No, yes, and I'll list all your stuff, but please say it out loud. Thank you for that, Rohan.
All right, so the name of my bookstore is Kizzy's Books and More. So you can find us on our website, www.kizzysbooksandmore, you spell it out as one word, .com. And then also you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Kizzy's Books and More. And that's where you can see our different posts about books and just to follow us to see what's going on. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all at the event. So stop by my table and harass me with the book.
Love it. Thank you, Rohan, for that. I'm horrible at social media. So also share your social and then maybe remind everyone we're also fundraising.
Oh, yes. So,
yes.
so yeah, we are fundraising to make sure that we are providing free books. While we have donations, we still want to invest in the community. So I think Mimi will also leave the link, but the GoFundMe we're dropping, all of that money is going straight to Kizzy's Books and More to buy more books for the community. Please, please, please donate there. Support a Black woman-owned business in the South. I'm okay. So, and I guess for folks, you can always follow Blasian March, Blasian March on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, also our website, blasianmarch.org. And you can follow me on all platforms at Diary of a Firebird. That's also the name of my website, diaryofafirebird.com.
Love, love, love. All right, you two. I will see you soon in person at the Blasian Book Fair Orlando. Thank you so much. And listeners, again, go to these links, click on all of them, and we hope to see you there as well. Bye.
Bye.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Please subscribe and rate my podcast on your platform of choice and leave a review. You can become a patron of the show at patreon.com/SifuMimiChan to help keep this podcast going. Follow me and interact on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Instagram or Facebook.